August the 1st. That's the date Donald Trump has chosen to start a new kind of war. No tanks, no troops, just tariffs detonated like economic warheads aimed not at foreign enemies, but at the very foundations of the American empire. 10% on every BRICS nation, 50% on Brazil and Mexico. The moment it flirts with BRICS, he threatens to kill USMCA, a pact worth over $700 billion a year. Trump says it's about strength, about sovereignty, about saving America. But what if the truth is far more dangerous? What if in trying to preserve America's dominance, he's accelerating its collapse? Every tariff is a cut to our own supply chains. Every threat pushes allies into enemy arms. And every time Trump pounds his fist, the dollar trembles just a little more. This isn't protectionism, it's economic suicide dressed as patriotism. And the countdown has already begun. No longer just a loose economic club. BRICS now speaks of currency independence, resource alliances, and dollar-free trade. Iran, Indonesia, and UAE are queuing up. China and Russia want a new world order. And Mexico, the underdog in Washington's backyard, just stepped into the ring. At the Rio summit, Mexico's foreign minister didn't come to listen. He came to signal, we want in. This isn't just diversification, it's defiance. And Trump. He took it as treason. He's proposing tariffs that could choke Mexico's economy. 10% across the board, 50% for Brazil. He called the move economic betrayal and BRICS a threat to American sovereignty. Is he wrong? Not entirely. A BRICS-aligned Mexico could accelerate the collapse of the dollar as the world's default currency. This is no longer a trade war. It's a financial civil war, where the battleground is global and the currency is power. Let's be clear. Donald Trump isn't mad. He's scared. He built his political brand on America first. But Mexico's BRICS flirtation exposes a truth he can't tweet away. The empire is losing its grip. His reaction? Classic scorched earth. Any nation aligning with BRICS will face 10% tariffs. Brazil? 50%. It's not just talk. The White House confirmed the tariffs will hit August 1st unless trade concessions are made. The blowback was swift. Lula da Silva, Brazil's president, fired back. We don't want emperors. China dismissed the tariffs as coercive nonsense. Ramaphosa of South Africa said, BRICS is about development, not domination. But the markets didn't flinch. Wall Street knows something deeper is brewing if Mexico truly shifts the dollar faces an existential threat. The average American, get ready. Higher avocado prices, more expensive vehicles. Electronics with BRICS components taxed to the moon. This isn't protectionism, it's panic. And it's pushing Mexico further into BRICS' arms. Trump thinks he's defending the dollar. But in reality, he may be accelerating its downfall. Mexico is walking a tightrope once stretched between history and ambition. For years, its economy thrived under USMCA. But deep down resentment brewed dependency, economic pressure, and political bullying. Now Mexico sees a new path. Joining BRICS isn't just about trade. It's about rewriting its destiny. Imagine this: Mexican auto exports flowing to India, avocados fueling China's growing middle class, Mexican lithium batteries powering Russian railroads. It's not a fantasy, it's strategy. President Scheinbaum isn't blind to the risks. Trump's tariffs could gut key industries. The U.S. remains Mexico's largest buyer, but BRICS dangles something far juicier: infrastructure investment from China tech partnerships with India, energy security via Russia, plus political leverage on a scale Mexico has never held. But here's the kicker: if Mexico pulls this off, it could become Latin America's trade linchpin, a bridge between the Americas and the global South. Other nations are watching: Argentina, Colombia, even Chile. If Mexico succeeds, BRICS isn't just a bloc. It becomes a counterweight to the G7, but failure. It could spark a collapse in trust, trade, and diplomacy. This is not about choosing sides. It's about choosing futures. And Mexico is all in. This is no longer about avocados, cars, or trade policy. This is a war over the world's economic architecture. And Mexico just stepped into the arena, torch in hand. Trump sees betrayal. BRICS sees opportunity. And the world sees a superpower unraveling. If Mexico succeeds, it won't just boost its exports. It will shift the balance of power. If it fails, it risks isolation, economic pain, and political chaos. The US dollar is not invincible. And now, the empire faces a challenger it never expected from right across the border. So, America, what's your take? Is Mexico a traitor or a trailblazer? Will Trump's tariffs stop the tide or feed the storm? Are we witnessing the fall of a financial empire or its rebirth? Drop your hottest take below. And don't forget to subscribe before this video mysteriously vanishes, because this is the real trade war, and Mexico's holding the match. In times of geopolitical turbulence, economic decisions are no longer just about trade. They become statements of identity, power, and future alignment. Mexico's recent flirtation with the BRICS alliance is more than a trade realignment. It is a historical pivot that signals a deep dissatisfaction with the traditional US-dominated global order and a growing desire to build something new. For decades, Mexico operated in America's economic shadow. Through agreements like NAFTA and USMCA, it built an industrial base that served American consumers while depending heavily on US demand and policy stability. However, this dependency also meant vulnerability. When Washington changed policies or imposed new rules, Mexico had little choice but to comply. But global power is shifting. BRICS, once seen as an informal economic bloc, has matured into a real force. With over 40% of global GDP, this alliance offers access to alternative markets, diversified partnerships, and a challenge to the US dollar's supremacy. For countries like Mexico, joining BRICS isn't just about escaping American pressure. It's about gaining leverage, security, and a place at the table of emerging powers. The lesson here is simple but profound. In a multipolar world, loyalty cannot be taken for granted. Mexico is not betraying the United States. It is responding to decades of asymmetry. When a partner consistently feels overpowered or undervalued, it begins to look for alternatives. BRICS is that alternative. Donald Trump's reaction to Mexico's BRICS interest illustrates how economic disruption quickly becomes political. His proposed 10% tariffs on BRICS-aligned nations and 50% on Brazilian goods are not just about defending American trade. They're about preserving the illusion of control. But that control is slipping. Consumers, meanwhile, are caught in the crossfire. Higher prices for goods, uncertainty in the supply chain, and possible job losses are all side effects of trade conflict. Yet these are not random events. They are consequences of deeper strategic shifts. If we ignore the political dimensions of trade, we misunderstand its real impact. Another lesson: when a small or mid-sized country acts boldly on the global stage, it forces major powers to respond. Mexico's decision to engage BRICS sparked reactions not only from Trump, but also from China, Brazil, and South Africa. Each had something to gain or lose from Mexico's alignment. This proves that influence is no longer reserved for superpowers alone. Strategic geography, resource diversity, and diplomatic timing can turn any country into a key player. This isn't just about BRICS, or Mexico, or even the dollar. It's about whether America has already pulled the pin on its own economic grenade. Trump believes fire is the answer. Burn the trade deals, scorch the alliances, bomb the global system with tariffs. But fire doesn't rebuild, it consumes. And while he rages on Truth Social, the world is moving away from the dollar, away from Washington, away from fear-based diplomacy. Mexico is flipping sides. Brazil is defiant. China, Russia, India, they don't fear Trump's anger. They feed on it. And we're left with rising prices, nervous markets, and an empire lurching toward irrelevance. This is not a strategy. It's a collapse protocol disguised as leadership. The empire isn't under attack. It's crumbling from within. And Trump, he's not fighting to save it. He's lighting the fuse. But power shifts come with risks. Mexico still relies heavily on the U.S. economy. Its trade routes, manufacturing pipelines, and economic systems are intertwined with American infrastructure. A misstep could result in severe economic backlash, political instability, and internal division. Mexico must balance ambition with caution. Joining BRICS too quickly or too openly might trigger retaliation before the benefits materialize. Still, what we are witnessing is not just Mexico's gamble, it's a symptom of global realignment. Countries are recognizing the vulnerabilities of relying too much on any single power, especially the United States. They are exploring new frameworks, currencies, and alliances. This movement is not anti-American, it is post-American. The United States must also learn from this. Coercion, tariffs, and threats may produce short-term compliance, but they erode trust in the long run. If Washington wants to remain influential, it must lead through cooperation, not dominance. Mexico's pivot should not be seen as betrayal, but as a call for balance. A more respectful, equitable partnership may achieve more than any trade war ever could. From a strategic perspective, we must recognize that trade is now the front line of political ideology. Choosing to trade in local currencies bypassing the dollar is not just an economic act. It is a vote of confidence or defiance toward existing global systems. In this case, Mexico is testing what it means to exist beyond the dollar. For investors, analysts, and citizens, this means understanding that economic security is now tied to global political shifts. The safety of the US dollar, the reliability of trade agreements, and the price of imported goods are no longer guaranteed. Vigilance, diversification, and strategic foresight are essential. Finally, the personal lesson: do not assume stability is permanent. What seems unthinkable, like Mexico joining BRICS, can become reality overnight. Individuals, businesses, and governments must adapt to uncertainty. The future belongs not to those who resist change, but to those who prepare for it. We are living in the middle of a geopolitical reboot. Mexico's BRICS maneuver is not the last shockwave. It is the beginning of a new era where influence is earned, not inherited, and where every economic decision echoes across borders. What began as a geopolitical tremor from Mexico may now be rippling into a regional earthquake across Latin America. When Mexico announced its intention to explore full membership in the BRICS alliance, most analysts saw it as a bold but isolated move. After all, Mexico has long been tethered to the United States through the USMCA deep supply chains and a shared border economy. But now, in the aftermath of Trump's tariff threats and the rising strength of BRICS, a much larger pattern is emerging. Countries like Argentina, Colombia, and Chile are watching Mexico's move closely, and some are preparing to follow suit. This is not just a trade realignment, it's the possible birth of a new geopolitical bloc, a Latin American BRICS extension that could shift the balance of power away from the West and toward a multipolar future. Mexico's pivot showed that even America's closest partners are rethinking their place in the global order. In Argentina, a country struggling under IMF debt and inflation, the BRICS proposal represents more than trade. It's economic sovereignty. Argentina has already applied for BRICS membership, and its new leadership is sending signals that it seeks alternatives to Western-dominated financial systems. Colombia, too, under a new progressive administration, has voiced interest in South-South cooperation and closer ties with emerging powers like China and India. Chile, while more cautious, is weighing the benefits of diversifying beyond Western alliances. This is a trend, not a coincidence. Latin America is waking up to the limitations of the old system. BRICS was once viewed as a loose economic cooperation group, but in 2025 it has transformed into something much more ambitious. Today, BRICS is building its own financial infrastructure, an independent development bank, an alternative to the SWIFT payment system, and a framework for trading in local currencies like the yuan, rupee, and ruble. For Latin America, this opens doors trade without dollars loans, without IMF strings, and a cooperation without political lectures. This vision is deeply appealing to nations long frustrated by what they perceive as Western hypocrisy, preaching democracy while enforcing economic discipline. Mexico's signal at the Rio summit was not just about joining BRICS. It was about supporting a broader movement reclaiming agency in a global system stacked against the global South. For decades, Latin American nations have danced to the tune of U.S. foreign policy. Aid, trade deals, and military support came with conditions: align your politics with Washington or lose access. IMF bailouts were packaged with austerity demands that often deepened poverty and social unrest. The resentment built up quietly. But now, with the rise of BRICS, there is a tangible escape route. Latin American leaders no longer ask, how can we please Washington? Instead, they ask, what do we gain from staying in this system? And increasingly, the answer is less than we used to. China has become Brazil's largest trading partner. Russia is offering energy deals with fewer strings. India is investing in digital infrastructure across the continent. Latin America is discovering its own power rooted in resources, geography, and youth. It no longer wants to be the backyard of the West. It wants to be a front-row player in the new order. The United States sees the shift, and it's nervous. In response to Mexico's BRICS ambitions, Donald Trump fired off threats of massive tariffs. Behind closed doors, diplomatic pressure is being applied to discourage BRICS alignment. Aid is quietly being withheld. Trade agreements are being reviewed. But here's the problem. These tactics no longer work. Every threat pushes more countries to consider alternatives. Every sanction reinforces the need for sovereignty. And every tweet that insults a partner strengthens BRICS' narrative that the West leads through coercion, not cooperation. If the United States continues down this path, it risks turning allies into opponents and pushing an entire continent into the arms of its rivals. The question now is whether this momentum can crystallize into something permanent. Mexico's involvement is pivotal. With its manufacturing power, strategic location, and growing political confidence, Mexico can serve as the anchor for a BRICS Latin extension. Argentina brings agriculture, lithium, and oil. Brazil already holds founding membership. Colombia and Chile can offer stability and innovation. Together, these nations could form a credible southern counterweight to the G7, a bloc not defined by ideology, but by independence. But success is not guaranteed. The region still faces internal challenges: corruption, inequality, fragile institutions. And BRICS itself is not a perfect model. China and Russia bring their own agendas. Balancing sovereignty with new dependencies will require strong leadership and strategic clarity. Yet the direction is clear. Latin America is no longer waiting for permission. It is exploring a world beyond Washington. We are witnessing a once-in-a-generation shift. BRICS is no longer just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's an idea that the future of global trade, finance, and diplomacy does not have to revolve around Washington, London, or Brussels. And Latin America, it's not just watching, it's moving. Mexico lit the spark. Others are gathering kindling. Whether the fire becomes a bonfire of resistance or burns out in internal friction will depend on the choices made in the next few years. One thing is certain: the age of unipolar dominance is fading. The world is getting louder, messier, more diverse, and Latin America just found its voice. It was supposed to be a show of strength, a bold defense of American workers, a strategic strike to preserve U.S. dominance in global trade. But what if Trump's tariff threats are doing the opposite? What if in trying to protect America, he's actually weakening it from within? Let's break it down. Former President Donald Trump has long positioned himself as the warrior against unfair trade. Back in 2018, he launched a series of tariffs targeting China, Europe, Canada, and Mexico. The justification: protect American jobs, fight foreign manipulation, and bring manufacturing back home. Now in 2025, he's doubling down. In response to Mexico's potential BRICS alignment, Trump is proposing sweeping tariffs: 10% on all BRICS-affiliated nations, 50% specifically on Brazilian goods, and a direct threat to renegotiate or tear apart the USMCA. At first glance, it sounds tough, decisive, nationalist. But underneath that bravado lies a dangerous gamble. Here's the first problem. Tariffs are not free punches. They are taxes on imports. And who pays those taxes? Not Brazil, not China, not Russia. American consumers. The average U.S. household already pays hundreds more each year for goods due to existing tariffs. If Trump's new measures hit prices for cars, electronics, produce, even essentials like medicine could surge.